I don't like to follow rules because there aren't rules. The rules are tell the story the best way that you can to inform the viewer. And I think that's one of the things that I've been successful with is to say, I'm not going to do it the way that everybody else does it because there's no reason to.
Welcome to the Next Level Journalist, where you will hear from some of the best journalists in the business or who have been there, done that, and willing to share with you what they've learned so you can get better, faster.
My guest today is a news anchor at WZVN-TV in Fort Myers, Florida. He is also the host of Killer Fastball podcast and the author of Write Like You Talk, A Guide to Broadcast News Writing. Jeff Butera, thank you so much for making time for this today.
Happy to be here.
Well, Jeff, obviously we could go down a lot of different rabbit holes of just what I shared. I'm sure you do other things as well. So if we can stay somehow focused on your TV career journey, that would be awesome. But please fill in the blanks along the way about, how you got to launching a podcast, how you got to writing a book, and all the above. So if you don't mind, in a Cliff Notes version, just tell us a little bit about your TV journey. What got you interested, when it all started, and bring us up to speed.
So I decided this was what I wanted to do when I was in 7th grade, and everything that I've done has been working toward that. But I will say when I first said this is what I wanted to do, I wanted to go into sports broadcasting. And that dream lived on until I got to college, and I got to do a little work covering both sports and news. And when I was covering sports, I didn't really like it the way that I assumed that I would. It was very strange to go to a game and you couldn't be a fan. You were just supposed to be this objective observer, and it didn't come alive for me the way that I thought it would. Whereas covering news felt like it was something new every day. It felt like it was a little more consequential. It felt like it was something that mattered a little bit, and that was what got me alive. So I went to the University of Florida and was lucky enough to be able to do a bunch of hands-on things to get that experience and decide what worked for me, and then launched into my career. And I've been all around the country reporting and anchoring, and then been here in Fort Myers for almost a decade now.
That's incredible. So let's talk about maybe your first job, whether it be, what do you consider your breakthrough into the industry?
My breakthrough into the industry was a New Year's Eve party. 2002 into 2003, I was a junior in college. A friend of mine was producing the 11 o'clock newscast at the ABC affiliate in Gainesville, where I was going to school, and she invited me to go. And I met her managing editor, who was also the 5:30 anchor at the station. We chatted that night, hit it off. He seemed to take a liking to me, and on a whim said, "Hey, we have a weekend photographer position open. Do you think you could do it? Go to school Monday through Friday and then shoot for us on the weekends." He had never seen me shoot a lick of video, but I had made a good impression, and he decided to take a chance. And I said, absolutely. So I did that for 4 months, and the 2 weekend reporters that they had at the time, they let go in April of the following year. And I went to him and I said, I think I can do both. I think I can report and shoot at the same time. And he said, well, when you're gathering VOSOTs today, and put together one of them as a package and just show it to me. Don't put it on TV, just show it to me. So I did that. I did that for 2 weekends, and he said, okay, I think you can do this. So for the rest of my college career, I was also a weekend reporter at a rail station in Gainesville, and that was huge to have that level of experience before I graduated college, and that led into the next job and the next job from there. But it was just kind of like a head start that was really helpful.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, I hear, networking and relationships. You said you didn't even see your work, but if someone likes you, it's a lot easier to obviously want to work with that person or have that person work for you. So, I can relate to that. My background's in sports. It's funny here you say, you pursued sports and then went news. I was always in sports. So 10 years of weekend sports anchor, and I knew that was my passion, but I know that I am doing what I am today because of relationships and networking. So it's great to hear right out of the gate about your experience. So obviously the opportunity presented itself and you took advantage of it. And then I guess from there, pick up with where you went, where your career took you from there.
So my first job was in Florence, Alabama. I was in a bureau for a station in Huntsville, Alabama. It was a really good experience for me because it was a good lesson in that I was going to a place that the people there were interested in things that I was not necessarily interested in. You know, these people love to fish, they love to hunt. I had never done either of those things in my entire life before, but it was what mattered to the people in the market that I was working in. So I tried to expose myself to things that weren't really for me, but were for them. And that was a good lesson for me in covering that community. So I did that for a year, and then I went to Jacksonville for a couple of years as a reporter. I went out to Phoenix and worked there for a couple of years as a reporter. And then I moved back home. I wanted to come back home to Florida, so I moved to Tampa and worked there for 2.5 years as a reporter. And then the anchoring opportunity came open in Fort Myers, and I was ready for a new challenge. And it was somebody who saw something in me and was willing to take a chance. I did not have a lot of anchoring experience, but he said, "I think you can do this." And it was a huge opportunity and a huge career changer. And I've been loving the last 10 years of doing that here in Fort Myers.
So I'm curious, where did the book come into play? At what point did that become something that you were curious about and pursued?
So it really came to life in 2014. Right Like You Talk originally started with a guy named Ed Sardella, who was the longtime main anchor at KUSA in Denver. He's a legend in our business. And he had basically put together a bunch of notes that he had taken over the years on writing and kind of put it into a little notebook and was selling it. And one of his former producers happened to be my agent. She said, "You should really buy this book. It's very good." So I did when I just started in the business, and had it with me for years and would read it every now and again. And then back in 2014, Ed decided he wanted to retire his involvement with the book, but he'd like for the book to live on. And my agent, who also knew him, said, "You should really talk to Jeff. You guys have a very similar philosophy on news and news writing." So we chatted a little bit, and ultimately he agreed that he felt like the book was safe in my hands. So we came to a deal. And I took the notes that he had and rewrote it into my own words, used kind of his book as an outline, and made sure it felt like my own. And then I started publishing in, I guess it would have been late 2014. I published on my own and have been selling ever since. And I think the big driver is just I've got a Twitter account that a bunch of people in the business follow, and it's a good place to just talk about how can we better communicate with our viewers. What's the best way to do it? How can we have more of a conversation with people as opposed to sounding like we're standing atop a mountain for all to hear? And that's where the book kind of is based.
That's awesome. And obviously writing is something that is important in the industry, but obviously important, clearly something important to you, and I feel like that really can separate. Really is a big differentiator with good journalists and great journalists. Just the writing element of it, among other things, but that definitely I think is a core element. So with that said, what are some other things that you think separate the good and great journalists?
I think writing is one of them. If you can be conversational with your viewer, you'll be a much more effective communicator, and that's huge. I think creativity and an ability to adapt to a changing landscape is huge. If you're thinking about different ways that you can reach your audience and understanding that the news changes so fast. I mean, the way that we deliver our content to people right now compared to where we did when I first started 20 years ago is crazy. I think you have to have the right mindset about what it is that we're doing and who we're doing it for, who the customer is. It's the viewer at home. They are here to understand the world that they live in and what's happening and how it relates to them. And if you keep that mindset, you're going to be a much more effective journalist than just kind of... I see a lot of people doing almost copycat journalism with some stories that I think, why does that matter to a viewer? It doesn't. And if you really truly think about who the customer is and focusing on the things that would matter to them, that's huge. I think another differentiator is we've got to do a better job at being a little more skeptical, saying why. We're taking too much at face value, and the lessons we've learned over the years are that we can't be doing that. We need to say why, be skeptical, ask questions, dig for more answers, not just take the things that we're hearing because we have so much news to put on TV. And moving on. There's value in depth because the viewers aren't going to stick around for paper-thin stories that aren't really worthy of their time. Again, they're the customer, and we've got to serve them better.
So, Jeff, you alluded to your time in Alabama. It's interesting. It sounded like you learned that lesson early on. It wasn't something that you were necessarily interested in, but it was about your customer. It was about the viewer. So, what other lessons have you learned early on that have stuck with you, resonated with you over time, that you can say, you know what, I learned these things over the, decades plus of experience, but I can hand this off to you right now. Like, hey, save yourself the trouble. Take this piece of advice from my trial and error or my experience.
I think some of the things that I've learned, one, always be transparent with your viewer. Explain what's going on. Never conceal anything. Viewers know what's going on, and I think that they will respond to that. Whenever I'm anchoring and we have something go wrong, I don't act like it didn't go wrong. It's obvious to everybody that it went wrong. Just be transparent. Be genuine. Be yourself. Don't try to be somebody that you're not, or don't try to be like this other person. Just be you, because viewers respond to somebody that's being transparent. One of the best pieces of advice that I remember was Byron Pitts, who now works at ABC. He was at 60 Minutes at the time, though. He was covering the earthquake that happened in Haiti about 10 years ago. And he was asked about how do you approach someone when they're dealing with devastation. And he said, be a human being, look for human moments. Be a human being. Just be a human. As long as you just are in that moment trying to understand what somebody's going through, and just be open with them and open to what's going on with them, and don't be a jerk, it's going to be a better thing. We all play a role in the reputation of this business, and the reputation of the business is not great for reasons that we've done to ourselves and also for political reasons. But we are all stewards of the industry, and the more you behave like a human being and just tell stories and try to serve the customer, the better off the business is going to be.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think when I ask this next question, sometimes people have a hard time because they want to be humble about it and show some humility. But obviously, one of the things that comes to my mind, you probably consider yourself a great writer. I mean, to have written a book, with such a title, writing might be one of your fortes. With that in mind, other fortes that come to mind, can you talk about your skill development, how you developed the things that separate you, maybe that make you unique and good at what you do?
I do think my writing helps me stand out, and that's something that's evolved over time. When I go back, even as recently as my work in Tampa, I think the writing has increased tremendously since then, just because I study it and I try to figure out ways that we can communicate better, and I truly think about how we can do that. And I've seen that evolution. I think one of my strengths is I can take complex topics and make them easier to understand. My brain works that way. One of the reasons I love the business is because I like solving puzzles, and to me, the writing aspect is a puzzle for me. It's how do you take all of these elements that you have and put them into a way that the viewer can understand and appreciate and get information, but also be engaged with what you're talking about. And to me, putting that story together is a puzzle. And I think I'm pretty good at taking even stuff that's very complex and just narrowing it down to what matters most, what's simple, and going from there. I think another thing that I'm good at is understanding that you don't have to follow some formula. I've seen reporters who feel like it has to be track shot, stand up, track, and we're done. And it's not. Not at all. You have to approach the story with, okay, if I have these elements, what is the very best way to tell this story? Maybe it's a story with no sound bites, because sound bites are just going to get in the way. Maybe it's a story with all sound bites. Maybe my track is going to get in the way. Maybe it's a story with no stand-ups, or maybe it's a story with 5 stand-ups. If that's the best way to tell the story, then I'm going to do it. And I don't like to follow rules, because there aren't rules. The rules are tell the story the best way that you can to inform the viewer. And I think that's one of the things that I've been successful with, is to say, I'm not going to do it the way that everybody else does it, because there's no reason to.
At what point do you think you learned that? Because not being in the industry anymore, I look at TV now, and what 2020 shows us is that, rules definitely got broke in order to deliver the message, right? I mean, we're doing this right here to do interviews with people. I see post game, whether it be sports, they are doing Zoom, and I've got friends who say that that's how they have to do their Q&As anymore. At what point do you think that you wrapped your head around that? Like, you know what? Let's be creative with this thing. There are, the rules are meant to be either bent or broken, or finding your way. All these other things that just stood out to me about that answer that you just gave there, about because you're the first person that said that, and I'm interested in learning about how you discovered that for yourself. Like, you know what? I can do my own thing. And do it in a way that's going to be, that'll resonate with my viewer, and that, for lack of better words, has provided you with success, it sounds like.
I think I was always dabbling with it. I remember stories that I did in Jacksonville when I was barely in the business that were outside of the box, and then I started doing more in Phoenix. I remember one story that came to mind when I said a story that had no sound bites, because sound bites were going to get in the way, and all it really was the station said, hey, they're doing the Iowa caucus today, and Democrats vote in this crazy way where they move into certain corners of the building to cast their ballot, essentially, and we want you to explain it to the viewers. And my thought process was, if I interview somebody and they try to explain it off the cuff, I think that's just going to be more confusing. What if I do a visual demonstration of what's going on? So we set it all up with M&Ms on a table and explained how they moved. And that story had no stand-ups in it, or not no stand-ups, no sound bites in it. Had a ton of stand-ups, and it was the most effective way to do it. And it was kind of an eye-opener. Of, you don't have to do interviews on every story if it's not going to help. The reason that we do interviews is it's going to make for a better story. But if it's not, then don't. So I started to dabble with it, and I think over time your confidence grows with the idea that you can be creative and you can find ways to make it work. And once you can start visualizing in your head, once you start working with photojournalists who are with you and they're thinking along with you, I'm so lucky to work with a great group here in Fort Myers that are super talented, and they know me and they know kind of how my brain thinks, and they know I just got to be in tune, because Jeff's probably not going to do the normal thing. And once you get there and get some confidence, then it becomes really fun.
Yeah, I hope people are picking that up, because obviously doing things different is what's going to separate you, right? If you're doing things, like you said, both side, like it's, you're not really going to separate yourself. But also, I want to acknowledge the fact that, you're doing all these under a deadline. It goes without saying, but to be that creative under those type of conditions obviously takes experience and time to get to that point. So great to hear that, and the fact that you acknowledge that, you're working with photojournalists who also probably help that curve as well, that creative curve. I tell people all the time, I get my best ideas from other people. Like, I might come up with an idea, but I bounce off of them, and they'll take it to another level. Yep. So it sounds like it's been somewhat of your experience as well. Jeff, kind of talk about maybe some challenges that you've faced along your career, and maybe something that stands out to you, whether it be, a couple of days ago or a couple of years ago, whatever stands out to you that you said, you know what, that was a challenging season or event or story, but, I learned from it, got better. Anything that comes to mind?
I'll give you two. One was, I went through a rough time when I was full-time reporting, just dayside reporting, or everyday reporting, where I felt like I wasn't doing stories that really mattered. I felt like I was doing stories that were just filling up time on the newscast and were gone as soon as they were done. It wasn't going to resonate with a viewer, didn't have any impact on anybody who watched it. It just filled up 2 minutes of time, and then it was gone. And if you have a string of those for a long time, you start to get a little disenchanted by this business and feel like, what am I doing here? What am I really doing with my life? Or at least that's how I thought. Mm-hmm. And that was always rough. The lesson that I took away from it was, the more that I put into finding stories of significance, finding stories that I felt like had value, and that I was able to successfully pitch as stories that the managers would say, yeah, go do that. That was really helpful. So the more effort that I put into that, and the more time that I put into that, there was something coming back to me. So that was really helpful. I will say now, as a full-time anchor who is still reporting and trying to do a couple of pieces for sweeps, every book and that sort of thing. There is great satisfaction in being able to sort of really sink my teeth into a story, particularly ones that I'm very interested in, I want to do. And my station is very nice about allowing me that freedom because they know, it's going to come back as a good story. But I get when people feel like, what am I doing here? What am I really doing when you just have a bunch of stories right in a row where you don't think it really matters to the viewer at home. That was always rough. The other lesson that I had was I'm sort of an anomaly in this business in that a great many people who are in this business are people persons. I'm not really a people person. I mentioned that one of the reasons I love the business is the writing aspect, and I love putting it together and feeling like it's a puzzle. But I love talking to people, and I love, if I'm being honest with myself, my personality is not really like that. Mm-hmm. So that was a bit of a struggle for me, to be sure. And even just when you go on television, particularly as an anchor, there's a level of insecurity that exists about, am I doing this right? Are people going to think that I'm strange, awkward, funny, not very good at this? There's all kinds of insecurity and doubt that comes into you. And I was just terrified when I first started that I'd say something dumb and end up on YouTube. And my career would be defined by 10 seconds of a goof rather than what I'd been working for. And the fear of that can be very paralyzing. And that was a huge struggle for me. And I think just getting comfortable with myself, comfortable in my own shoes, comfortable enough to say, this is who I am, and just being genuine has really helped me as an anchor because I don't feel as guarded on television as I was before. You don't think that comes across, but it does. Because, as I said before, viewers can sense when someone's being genuine, and they can sense when someone is not. And they can sense a wall up between you and them. And the best anchors are just who they are. They're genuine, they're comfortable, they are who they are, like it or not. And, my approach has always been, I care about this business, I care about informing the viewers, I think there's value in it, and I'm gonna be me. And hopefully that's okay. And I think that's really.
Well, I love the transparency, right? You've already shared about how you need to be transparent, and obviously you backed it up just by what you shared right there. That's awesome stuff, Jeff. I'm going to leave this last one up to you. It's one of the things I used to ask in case I missed something when I would do a story. Is there anything else that you want to share that maybe I didn't ask you, or you're thinking, this particular demographic, aspiring TV journalists, need to know this piece of information before you hop off here? Anything else that you want to share?
I would tell them to do the business for the right reasons. Do it because you think there's value in what we're doing, that there's value in informing the community, that there's value in being a watchdog for people in power. The things that sometimes draw people to the business, I'm going to be on TV, that sort of thing, they fade really fast. And there's a lot of sacrifices involved in this business. You don't make a lot of money for a long time. You work lousy hours and you work holidays, and you're giving up a lot. And if you love it, it's okay. I mean, I still love this business. I've been in it for 20 years, and I love this business because I believe in it. But if you don't, it's not going to last for you. We're in a time where this business is changing a lot. And if we're going to survive, it's going to take people who are doing it the right way, doing it for the right reasons, that are going to allow it to continue to thrive for the next 30 or 40 years. And, if you want to be a part of that, awesome. We need great people. And I always tell young people in this business, if there's anything that I can do for you to help you on that path, let me know. Reach out. Because I want to help young people in this business continue to keep it thriving, because I think it matters.
That's great stuff. And that's exactly a big reason I do this, to bring people like yourself on here who I feel are the right people to get the message out there. Because you're right, there is so much I mean, everyone knows we have so much at our fingertips, right, with so many different platforms, and it's so important to get the right people out there and hopefully bringing up the next generation in the right way. So I have no doubt the stuff that you shared will do just that, Jeff. So thank you so much for your time, everything that you shared. I know that whoever sees this, hears this, just got better.
Awesome. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for checking out this channel. If you found this content beneficial, I'd appreciate it if you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and share it with someone you think might find it beneficial as well, because this channel was simply started and created to serve you, to help others grow, to learn how other successful TV journalists do or did it. So take what serves you so you can get better faster and reach your next level.